Well, good evening to you, good evening. Ha, look at that. That wagon just doesn't like staying coupled up, does it? There might be a different solution to the problem. We'll give that one a little rest for a while. How about that? It's, you know, fault finding. Now that's strange. Fault finding sometimes is a question of elimination. You know, when you turn a light switch on and nothing happens, and you don't know whether the fault is in the light switch or the wire or the bulb, do you? So what you do is you put a new bulb in, and if that works, then you know it was the old bulb. There we are. Anyway, what is it today? Sunday, the 22nd of March 2020. Now, we'll just leave that to amuse itself for a while. I know at least one of the people watching this is going to say that's all way too quick and that's why you've had a derailment. And what's come off? The locomotive this time. I know that there is one chap whose advice I thoroughly enjoy receiving, who watches some of the nonsense I put up. I try to encourage people not to. There must be better things to do. And one of his, I don't know if it's a pet hate. Hate might be too strong a word, but he doesn't actually like seeing trains racing. You know, a train like this in real life, and it's a sort of, I don't know, it might be semi-fitted, loose-fitted, whatever. They didn't hurtle around at great speed. They would perhaps meander along at 40 miles an hour. But of course, us, when we were children, when we got our first train set, we opened the regulator and chased them around the track as if they were crack expresses, which of course they're not. But there we are. I wonder if we can go round flat out again. There we are. Right, we'll park that there. One of the things that this track is making me very conscious of is that when I do build the big layout, I need to check all of the dimensions of the track. I won't go into detail. There is a chap who posted on YouTube a lot of very technical. I found them very, very interesting, but if you don't like train sets, if you don't like Hornby Dublo, you might say, crikey, that was boring. Well, sorry about that. Technical detail is often boring to people who aren't interested. And these particular videos, which I recommend to anyone who wants to get involved with this sort of stuff, explain all of the dimensions, all of the measurements, all of the things that you need to do if you are going to use track which might be 60 years old, some of this track may be from the 1930s, the early 1940s. Some of it may have been made in 1948 when Hornby got back into their stride after the... there was a certain amount of unpleasantness in the early 1940s, and Hornby sort of stopped making trains for a while. There are those who would suggest that it would have been better if the leaders of the world had got together in a room like this and played trains instead of starting wars and such like. I don't know if that would work as a theory. Is that just daft because perhaps I've been locked up for too many days in sort of isolation? But yeah, Hornby ceased producing model railways during that somewhat scary period for the obvious reason. So some of this track could be 70 plus years old, and when you put it down, you do need to make sure that everything lines up. And you've got to remember that in the life of this track, little boys have put it on bedroom carpets, and when Mum said it was time for bed, they didn't necessarily treat it with the respect it deserved. So there's the potential for lots of bits of this being distorted and bent and just wrong. And if you lay track that isn't level, trains will come off. When I laid this track, I hadn't read all of the technical stuff. So if you are thinking about building model railways, then yeah, it's a good idea to go on YouTube. In the search, just type Hornby Dublo. You will find rafts of stuff. You'll find rubbish videos from people like me who, you know, we play at this, and then you'll find a whole series of technically incredibly good videos. Now this is a set of, what have we got on here? We've got all tin plates, 3 horse boxes, a fish van and a guard's brake van. What I find interesting is the variation in colours. I'm sure some people find that more interesting than I do. Oh, hello, we've lost the guard's van. Now, the thing about different batches that Hornby produced, you know, there are 3 horse boxes in this train. And I'm just looking at, yeah, different colours of ink. Now, sometimes that was as simple as the shop might have had one in the window and possibly hot summer sun. I remember as a small lad, I used to go and press my nose against the window of a model railway shop in Ilford in Essex, close to the Ilford end of Valentine's Park. Brings back many happy memories just thinking about it. And very often in summer, shops like that would hang a sheet of yellow sort of, I don't know what it was, a sort of clear yellow sheet over the window so the sun didn't bake things that were in the window. So maybe that accounts for some variations, I don't know. Sometimes you will see a wagon that when you turn it round, one side is a different colour to the other, and clearly the whole wagon was printed at the same time, so that could be caused by sun. But if you look, there are two with grey roofs and one with a white roof. One's a sort of wooden brown, the other two are sort of red. The back wagon is a fish van. So I'm guessing this train was probably on its way to somewhere like Harwich Docks from Newmarket. Possibly. I don't know. Did they use Class 4 tanks on trips like that? I don't know. I'm sure someone will tell me whether they did or not. But of course, horse boxes had a compartment for the grooms. If you think about somewhere like Newmarket, there was a huge racecourse there, and yeah, they would trundle lots of horses backwards and forwards. And as an aside note, I used to know a chap, sadly, very sadly, because he was a wonderful, wonderful man. Used to know a chap, one of the bell ringers at St Mary the Virgin Church, and his father had been station master at Cambridge, and he told wonderful stories about how he would assist people getting horses in and out of the trains. Another technical thing, you saw the train lose its guards van. Now, in full-size working, a train like this should be fitted up with continuous brakes. Now, some trains have air brakes, pressure brakes. Some trains have vacuum brakes. In a moment, I'll tell you a dodgy joke about that, but, Can we do that on a... Yes, we'll do that in a moment. And the idea of continuous braking was that you needed the locomotive to operate the brakes all the way through the train. So when you put wagons together, you pipe them up. You connect the vacuum pipes or you connect the air pipes, depending what sort of brakes they've got. And the driver of the locomotive will then create a vacuum. People who work on old British railways, in the brake compartment and also on the locomotive, there's a gauge that tells you how many inches of mercury the ejector, the brake ejector, was creating. And ideally, it would pull 21 inches of mercury. So, yeah, guards would shout at drivers, give me 21 inches. And let's face it, not all railwaymen were good church-going chaps, and generally there'd be a certain amount of uncouth laughter with comments like that. But yes, 21 inches of mercury was the amount of vacuum that you were looking for. And if the train came apart, then the vacuum pipe would come apart. And when the vacuum is destroyed, the brakes go on every vehicle in the train. So the whole lot stops, locomotive, wagons, guards van, the whole lot. Of course, toy trains don't have continuous vacuum brakes on them. If there are any people from the United States of America, the former colonies, watching this, you will be pleased to know that an awful lot of British trains were fitted with Westinghouse brake gear. When you watch those cowboy films where cowboys run along the side of the train and jump on and all that sort of good stuff, When the locomotive is standing in the station, you know, as the sheriff is talking to the driver and his crew who've just been robbed, you'll very often hear a clacking noise, and that will be the Westinghouse pump on the locomotive continuing to pull vacuum. But there we are. That's enough of that really, isn't it? I think we should just run trains. There we are. Because of the rough track, we've got an ESR on the line, an emergency speed restriction. So we'll be running trains through the section a little bit more slowly than usual. The train has stopped. The Westinghouse brake has brought the whole train to a stand. What happens next? The guard has got to walk backwards along the track with his red flag in one hand and a pack of detonators in the other. He's got to walk back. This is rule book stuff. This, you should all know it. He's got to walk back 1.25 miles and place detonators on the line. And on the locomotive, the fireman has got to get off and he's got to walk forwards with a red flag and place detonators 1.25 miles in front of the train. And he's got to go to the signal box. And the signal box will send signals to the other signal box, and yeah, eventually people will work out what exactly happened. Yeah, in the brake van, of course, a proper guard will have a spare 3-link coupling or a spare screw coupling, and there will be a conversation, and it's quite likely that what's going to happen is the train, once the vacuum pipe on the end wagon has been closed, under the direction of the signalman, the train will set back and then the guard and the fireman will recouple the train. They'll use the emergency screw link if that was what went wrong with it. They will repipe it, and once they've satisfied the signalman that all is well, they will set off on their way to Harwich docks to send horses. I don't know, where shall we send them? Back to France? But there we are. Right. I feel a need, like all good railwaymen do, now that we've complied with all of the instructions, I think it's time for the footplate crew to put the kettle back on the back over the firebox and make a decent cup of tea.